definitely one to watch for Chelsea, very possibly one to watch for Manchester United as well. Newcastle are a slightly newer suitor that are looking for another striker. But obviously, if Alexander Isak stays, then Delap may be put off by that move because it's likely that he'd be playing second fiddle in his favoured position. And then we should just point out that in theory, Manchester City have both buyback and matching rights as well. But I'm not hearing any indication yet that they're considering entering that race, and probably even less so if they end up in this window signing Omar Marmoush to help support Erling Haaland.
Yes, and that looks like a deal that's progressing very, very quickly. Omar Marmoush to Chelsea, to Man City, sorry, along with a number of other deals. They look like, I mean, there's a comment earlier on from Maradon who said he doesn't expect much activity this month, but just at City alone, looks like there's going to be at least 3 signings.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we can say is that 112 million from last January will be surpassed by probably City alone. So if we take City in a little bit of detail, Omar Marmoush, as I've said, and again, let's make it clear, we're recording in the morning on the 9th of January because people in this window fail to appreciate how fast things can move. But right now, there's no offer to Frankfurt. And despite reports in Egypt that it's already a done deal, that has jumped the gun slightly. There's not me being pessimistic about it, but if you want the actual timeline, whether he joins or not, the reality is that work is being done on the player side to try and reach a full agreement. And Man City are confident that that will be done. And they will get buy-in from Marmoush to move immediately. Frankfurt have now been informed that Man City are going to make a bid, but there are no club-to-club negotiations at the time of recording. Let's see in the next hour or afternoon or days if that changes. And then it's all about price, because crucial to this story is Omar Marmoush does not have, as I reported last week, a release clause. So Man City have to find a way of convincing Frankfurt to sell now, even though Marmoush's goals may be the difference between them qualifying for the Champions League or not. And that means the price is going to go up. And as you can see, and it is correct to my understanding from the comment that you just put up there a moment ago, Frankfurt may ask for as much as 65 or 70 million pounds. And Man City are prepared to pay at the moment about 45, 50. So we wait and see whether there's some kind of middle ground there. This is normal to start 15, 20 million apart in a negotiation. But until that first offer is placed, we won't get a truer picture of the lay of the land. But City are serious about Marmoush, and they are advancing that deal. And it's not just because of his goals, it's the fact that he's versatile and he can basically play in the Julian Alvarez position. And you may note that the value of Alvarez was that he could fulfill a De Bruyne role or a Haaland role. And that's the kind of player that they're looking for. Victor Reis at Palmeiras is one to watch in the coming days. My understanding is that full personal terms have been agreed between Victor Reis and Manchester City. And now negotiations are active with Palmeiras, and a deal is going to be worth 30 million or more there. So that's going to be a very interesting one, because you're talking again about one of these generational type talents that has been trapped by several clubs for the last few years. And he's so mature for his age, incredibly intelligent off the ball, physical. And one of the most interesting qualities that he has, which I think is underrated in a modern centre-back, is when he's pulled out of position, because perhaps the fullbacks have attacked and you've been caught on the counter-attack, he's excellent at getting into wide areas and defending, because he's got fast acceleration over slow spaces and he reads the game really well. So he knows when to move out of that centre-back position and effectively become a makeshift fullback due to the fact that other players have been dragged out of position. And that's exactly what Pep Guardiola is looking for. A clever, savvy defender that can fill the holes so you don't get punished when you overcommit. And then the last name, and I don't think it's Reis or Kusanov. I think they're very much looking at both so they can plan for the now and plan for the future as well. But you've got Abdulkadir Kusanov, who is an Uzbeki centre-back currently playing for Lens, and Man City, Newcastle and Tottenham are the three clubs here. The asking price again is just over £30 million. Tottenham see that as relatively steep. Newcastle are not prepared to commit to that at the moment, but Manchester City are advancing and the player wants that move. So obviously if, and it is an if, Man City pull off all three signings, then they're probably going to be somewhere in the region of 105 to 120 million, which will be more than all the club spent collectively last January.
Yeah, as you said, so to Maradon's point, there is far more active. I mean, I remember doing videos with you last January. It was a very weird January that almost nothing anywhere happened, which we're not used to seeing, compared to the previous year where you had Arsenal bidding 80 odd millions for Caicedo. You had the Mihajlo Mudryk deal as an example. I think that was 2 years ago. So yeah, look, very interesting. And look, City looking to build now. And look, City are wise to do this. Yes, they're building for the future, but they still have the opportunity to win 2 trophies this year. And you never know with the Premier League. You never, ever know. There's still Liverpool fans that come onto our shows, Ben, that don't think they're the favourites, that still think City are. So I don't like the fact City are doing it. I'm a Man United fan. But I like looking at the way they behave. They've had a poor start to the season. A number of players look like they've timed out, but the club's going to go out there, invest its money into new players early. Not going to wait until, we're going to wait till the summer to spend. No, they're your targets. Go and get them now. There's still trophies to be won this season. So listen, fair play to Manchester City for going out. And it does feel like they're going to get a couple of these deals done when you read the sort of articles, stuff like that, and excellent players. And it was only sort of 7 to 10 days ago that the media were linking Arsenal to Omar Marmoush, and there was talk about an interest there. And maybe that was true, but it just feels like City have gone, don't care. We're just going to bid. We're not going to monitor. We're not going to say we're keen. We're just going to not literally throw the money down, but start serious negotiations and advance these things.
Yeah, and they had to because they'd lost Julian Alvarez. They'd brought in a lot of money for him and they hadn't replaced him. So it's kind of normal, given the season that they've had so far and then the injury to Rodri, that they would have to be very aggressive in the market. The irony is that if you look at the position, centre-back and a versatile attacker, you can make an argument in 2025, whether January or the summer, that there's more urgent priorities in terms of Kyle Walker could leave the club. So do you need more fullback cover and somebody maybe that can play on both sides? A central midfielder is the most urgent priority for Manchester City. And then you have the kind of Ederson-Ortega conundrum, because if Ederson leaves, do you buy a number one or do you promote Ortega? If Ederson stays, does Ortega want to go for more game time? So goalkeepers in summer 2025 is another thing that Manchester City are going to have to resolve internally or plan for as well. And I can see a lot of people are asking about the midfield situation in January. My sense with Man City and midfielders is if they can find the right name now, they'll move. But a lot of their targets, they have a low confidence that they are going to be for sale. So we obviously are aware and have been for quite some time that Man City won't move for Bruno Guimaraes in January, but retain an interest in him potentially for the summer. But Newcastle are flying at the moment. So if they get Champions League football, that's a tough deal to be done. Adam Wharton is on the list as well, as far as Man City are concerned. And again, probably more likely to be the summer than now. You've got Ederson at Atlanta. At a push, January could be a possibility, but there really isn't a huge desire for Atlanta to lose anyone. It's very similar to Frankfurt and Marmoush in the sense that they're flying, they're in contention to win Serie A. So the likes of Ederson and Ademola Lookman, who's been linked with Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia, not players that they really want to desperately let go in January, even if an astronomical offer is tabled. So City are not going to panic buy a midfielder unless they feel that the right name becomes available. And then obviously Martin Zubimendi is the other one that's high on the list of possibilities for Man City and even still Liverpool as well, because after not getting Zubimendi in the summer, Liverpool didn't go out and get another number 6. So now we have a situation where if Zubimendi changes his mind in January or the summer, I would expect both Man City and Liverpool to be in that conversation. And what's kind of odd about the Zubimendi situation is that there was a real optimism from Liverpool initially that very quickly turned to pessimism. And the player was under pressure to stay at Sociedad. And we know that he's in love with the club, but the release clause is still there. And the oddity is that not much time has passed since he finally decided to stay at Sociedad. And yet now the feeling is once again that maybe he's starting to regret that decision and plan for a 2025 exit. And I think some of that is down to the player's age as well, because he's in his mid-20s now, and he's at the point in his career where these Liverpool, Man City, top Premier League or European offers probably won't come around in 26, 27, 28, due to the fact that by then the player himself will be 26, 27 and 28. So if you're going to move, that 25, 26 peak age is a good time to get that big move. And the release clause, even though there's taxes and all of that, is still seen as relatively strong market valuation. So I would keep an eye on Zubimendi, whether that's January or more likely summer 2025. But again, part of the reason why Man City are going for Marmoush and these young centre-backs is because they know they're available now and they're not wasting their time. The midfielder that they're looking for has to be the right profile, not just somebody that's urgently available now. And if they move and make the wrong decision and spend a lot of their money in January, it might mean that they're not in the conversation for somebody that they really want in the summer. So I think Pep Guardiola doesn't want to panic buy, is very level-headed about the situation. And yes, there is a clear urgency for a midfielder now, but if they can't find one, they'll wait for the summer, and that will prove to be their big outlay then.
And look, that makes perfect sense, and I think for years I've discussed this with the Football Terrace community. I understand. Don't buy targets that are 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th on the list, especially if they don't meet the threshold of being good enough. My club, Man United, has done that before. Overpaid for players, rushed in. Oh, we need a body. They should bring someone in. Oh, it's cost 50 million. It'll be okay. And they haven't been good enough. And I think that as much as it's great to praise City for the way they've acted with Marmoush and Reece, if you've got 2 or 3 midfielders that you genuinely see as top class and much better than what you've got, if everybody that's below them in sort of the shortlist are nowhere near their level, there is no point wasting 30, 40 million pounds on them, because in the long term, that cheap move is then going to become quite expensive for you. So I think you have to be balanced. And I know that people say just spend. There's overspending and then there's overspending. And what you don't want to be doing is dropping too much money on these players and going way above and beyond. As you mentioned, Atalanta, I doubt they're going to let anybody go unless it's stupid money, because they're in contention to win their first ever Serie A. You've got Newcastle that are flying right now. They're probably going to make it into a Carabao Cup final. It's going to take stupid money to get Bruno G out of that club now, when they're going to need him for that final, if they make it indeed, and they've still got to do well in that second leg against Arsenal. So I do think that City fans need to be a little mindful with that. A lot of people are asking about Douglas Luiz. Could he go back to City? Could he make a Premier League return in your view?
Yeah, I think if the right offer comes around, it's a possibility, which is a little bit of a surprise because, again, that move to Juventus only took place over the summer. More likely, clubs are looking at a loan. The strongest link in the last sort of 24 hours was actually made with Nottingham Forest, but I've had that downplayed at this stage by Forest sources. A return to Villa is also seen as unlikely as well. So Premier League moves, I think at this stage, it's a bit premature to be overly connecting clubs with Douglas Luiz. However, the player hasn't necessarily settled in the way that he had hoped, and therefore a loan, potentially straight loan or with an option, could become a possibility. I've not heard much on Douglas Luiz and Man City at this stage. I've also not heard too much about the permanence of a deal in terms of Juventus wanting to cash in at this stage. So I think suitors are inquiring because they feel like the player is maybe a little bit unsettled. And Manchester United, by the way, are one of the teams that also asks for the conditions around Douglas Luiz, but it's not come to anything more than that at this stage. So it's a wait and see type thing. It wouldn't surprise me if we see some movement, but at this stage, I'm not aware that anything is close.
Makes a lot of sense. Look, viewers, any players, any questions you've got, send them in. If Ben has answers, if he has updates, I'm sure he'll be sharing them with